Hello and welcome to today's news on Vanguard Live. I'm Damlola Okushaki, and this morning we'll be reviewing and analyzing the front pages of the dailies. And I'm starting with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with at NBA Summit, our plans for Nigeria by Atiku, Tinubu, and Obi. I'll devolve more power to state governments. That's coming from Atiku. Tinubu will replicate Lagos, but no wonders in Nigeria. That's coming from Shetima. Also, 2023 election, not about religion, tribe, brought character, competence. That's coming from Obi. Also, CJN, Sonwolu, others seek judicial reform. Nigeria in disarray, need heroes. That's coming from Chimamanda DJ. And you can see this story on page 5 of Vanguard. And of course, we have a photo story showing the NBA summit. And of course, we can see the president-elect, Nigeria Bar Association, Yakubu Makufa San, also the APC vice presidential candidate, Senator Kashim Shettima. We also have the Labour Party presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, Edo State Governor. Of course, we have Obaseki. We also have SDP presidential candidate Prince Adewale Adi Bayo, and that's at the NBA summit. Now on page 35, we have PDP crisis. Wike, others jet out for critical meeting. That's according to source. On page 8, we have oil theft. Expert others indict federal government security agencies as Equatorial Guinea arrested tanker. Aviation crisis, we are currently engaging CBN. Others on $600 million blocked funds. That's coming from Lai Mohammed. Ahead of resumption, federal government committed to save schools. That's coming from CDS. On page 8, we have 2023 Shikaria part ways with Kwankwanso, assist NNPP. On page 12, military airstrikes level fear Bayum's terrorist enclave. Now, stories above on the page 11. Shoyinka questions federal government. Why ban IPOP and leave Miyetti Allah? On page 9, we have pipeline surveillance to Tompolo, Arewa, Ijo youth, ex-men, the leaders clash. A strike ASUU to consider a federal government offer at next meeting next week. And we have the big interview. Of course, Oko BPE Director General says what we are doing to revive Ajao Kuta, also AL ESCON, NNMC, and others. And lastly, on the front page of the Vanguard, on page 19, we have Nigeria's trade surplus declines 50% to $930 million. Now, away from Vanguard newspaper, we move to The Guardian. The Guardian is leading with NBA conference. Adichie decries a leadership deficit as candidate on May 2023 agenda. We also have the rider, Atiku saying everything negative is happening in Nigeria. 2023 will be about competence, not connection. That's coming from Obi. APT will replicate Lagos, Borno Wonder says Shetima. Falana urges lawyers to end illegal arrest and detention of citizens. You can see that on page 6. On page 2, Atiku would not hand over federal universities to states, AIDA clarifies. Tribunal orders INEC to release Oshun polls and materials to Oyetola APC for inspection. And on page 9 still, we have why suspect wanted to kill Dogara by Bauchi CP. And lastly, on The Guardian, we have PDP considers Southwest for IU's replacement. And you can see that on page 6. Now, away from Guardian, we move to The Nation. The Nation is leading with Tinubu, Atiku, Obi roll out plans on economy and security. Nigeria's unity power evolution non-negotiable, says a PDP candidate. Also, Labour Party flag bearer promises to transform Nigeria to a productive economy. You can see that on the front page, and it continues on page 28. Other stories in The Nation, we have no work, no pay rule. NSC backs ASUU on salary arrears. Also, stories above, we have why I dumped NNPP by Shikario, and you can see that on page 4. And on page 27, we have Tribunal grants Oyetola APC access to poll materials. And lastly, on The Nation, we have while Southwest must vote massively for Tinubu next year by APC leaders. You can see that on page 4 of The Nation. And lastly, let's see what the Punch is leading with. They're leading with insecurity, economic crisis, Atiku, Obi Slam, federal government. Shetima sells Tinubu's candidacy. Everything negative, situation pathetic, worst ever. That's coming from PDP and Labour Party presidential candidates. Of course, we also have the same writers as other stories, other papers, and you can get there also inside the Punch. Now, on page 19, we have a 570 million naira debts contracted to sue Oshun over airports. A building collapse, Lagos, others probe police arrest engineer. We also have Olubadan films as hoodlums invade palace, disrupt ceremony. Stories above, ASUU NEC decides on strike on Sunday, and that can be seen on page 16. NNPCI's 422 billion naira from 6 IOCs in August, and you can see that on page 19. And lastly, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, we have reps summon TCN over $33 million payment to Jenkins. And that's all we have on the front page of the Punch and the front pages of the dailies this morning. Join us after break for the analysis. All right, welcome back. If you're just joining me, this is Today in the News on Vanguard Live. I'm Damlola Ogunshaki. And joining me to analyze the front pages this morning is Mr. Dayo Akintobi. He is the publisher of Ilu Page Today, Like It Today, and Ikeja Jewelry Today. Good morning, Mr. Toby.
Good morning, Damlola. Good morning to our viewers. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, and of course, if you have actually seen the front pages of the dailies, you've just seen that they are all leading with the MBA summits. Of course, the promises from the presidential candidates from the three parties. Of course, this was held at the Nigerian Bar Association Annual General Conference. It was held in Lagos yesterday. Now, I think let me just brief you a little about what they all said. Of course, Atiku had his own promises, and some of them are saying that they have their own major roles. They talked about mainly the security. Talked about the schools, like Atiku saying that he's going to give the federal schools, is going to give the state powers over these schools. Now, what do you think about these promises? Although these are real, but I think I want you to first of all start with Atiku's promises. What do you think about it?
Yesterday's outing was a big deal for the candidates because essentially it was the first opportunity they've had to showcase their intentions for the country to the electorate. We saw them during the primaries kind of talk a little bit about some of the ideas they have. But yesterday was the first substantive opportunity for them to articulate their vision before the entire country. And it was done at a very credible forum, which is the annual general meeting of the Nigerian Bar Association, which is the association of the legal minds across the entire country. Is viewed to be a very credible, strong association. So that was a good place to showcase their plans for the country. And they all essentially spoke to their ideas. I recall Obi was saying essentially that competence and character is what will determine who becomes Nigeria's next president, and not entitlement or who you know or any of that. Atiku himself spoke to the issue of insecurity, and primarily he was talking about devolution of powers to the states, which has to do with restructuring, which has been something that's weighing heavily on the minds of many people in the country. And the APC flag bearer wasn't able to be there, but his vice stood in for him. And he essentially said, judge us on our record, that the presidential candidate as governor of Lagos State turned Lagos into a Dubai in Africa, essentially. Meeting very dire conditions when he came into office in 1999 and setting out a roadmap to where Lagos is the Mecca it is today. And he spoke mostly about the increase in internally generated revenue, because basically the notion is the more money the state has at its disposal, the more it can do for its people. So he promised, and he also talked about what he has done in Borno, that he has as the running mate, that when he was governor of Borno, despite the fact that Borno was under siege of terrorism, he was still able to do a lot to do with universities, to do with infrastructure, and to try and address the insecurity issue. So APC is saying, judge us on our record, look at what we've been able to achieve with state governors, and that we have the best plans in terms of where Nigeria needs to go come 2023. So I think it was a good outing. I think it was a good opportunity, a good first showing for all the candidates, and a good opportunity for Nigerians to hear from these people and begin to assess them independently based on their plans. Up to this point, we've had a lot of sentiment, a lot of personal attacks. We've had a lot of religious sentiments, ethnic sentiments, which at the end of the day really play little or no role in how effective these people will be in office. So for the first time yesterday, we began to hear things that will enable us to assess the kind of leaders they will be and to help us be able to make good judgments at the ballot boxes next year. We expect to see a lot more of these kind of outings, including debates and other such opportunities for them to tell Nigerians about their plans.
Obviously, some of the things they said yesterday were things Nigerians wanted to hear. But listening to others, I mean, we've been promised before. And of course, we've seen that, those promises were not fulfilled. Now, hearing this from the candidate, do you think it's just the number one, or there might actually be changes to them?
The first role of any politician is to get elected. And the first role of any elected politician is to get re-elected. So promises are their stock in trade. That's what they do. They make promises. But it is up to us to interrogate those promises and see how much fidelity was given to those promises. So fortunately, each and every person who's in the race right now, at least the front runners, the top four I call them, which is Atiku of PDP, Tinubu of APC, Obi of Labour Party, and Kwankwaso of NNDP. Those top four have all served in public office before, and they have public records that can be interrogated. So they can make promises. They can say, oh, I promise you the moon is made of blue cheese and I will give you whatever they want to promise. But we have things we can go back and look at to determine how much fidelity do they keep to their promises. So Tinubu, for example, as his running mate said yesterday, we will use sound financial and economic management experience and tools to turn the country's economy around. Look at what we did in Lagos. So people are free to go back and look between 1999 and 2007 how Lagos was transformed under Tinubu's leadership, and the roadmap he put in place that his successors have been using to build on the foundation that he laid. So did he keep the promises he made when he was campaigning in 1999 for election and in 2003 for re-election? So promises are just words, but we have yardsticks with which to measure those promises as a predictor of how well you will keep this set of promises you are making. So I hear things like ASUU strike. What would any of them do if they were in power to see that this kind of thing doesn't happen? So you look at it and you say, well, if Peter Obi, for example, when he was in Anambra, I hear his record on education was very good, that it was excellent in terms of what he did with the schools during his tenure in Anambra. So you can look at that and use it to predict what you think he would do if he were confronted with an ASUU situation today, which nobody's very happy about. It started in February. We're in August now. The children have been sitting at home for too long. It's not an ideal situation. We want the kind of politicians who know how to be conciliatory and who know how to compromise and who know how to bring people to the table and negotiate and find ways to heal wounds and cure grievances and make people feel good about themselves and put national service before individual concerns. We need leaders who can inspire that selflessness in everybody in the country, not just those who are serving or those who are called to serve, but even us, the followers as well. Everybody needs to put Nigeria and patriotism first before any individual considerations.
All right, for a country to be peaceful, you need justice. And CJN, that's the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwoola, and of course, Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and renowned author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and several others, they canvassed the reform for the Nigerian judiciary. As I said, this will position the country on the path of transformational change. What do you think about this?
Well, as I said, justice is the last bastion of hope for the common man. And when you look at the three branches of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, with the executive and the legislature, we get every 4 years to express, to give them a scorecard of how we like what they're doing or not. But with the judiciary, and the electorate has no say whatsoever in assessing the performance of the judiciary and making a choice as to whether you want them to continue or not. So a lot is riding on the judiciary because they're supposed to be impartial. They are the ones that look at what the executive and the legislature do. They're the balancing force that try to make sure that both the executive and the legislature who are leading us are doing things fairly and keeping things equitable for all Nigerians. So when the judiciary is inefficient, is incompetent, or is corrupt, it basically robs Nigerians, robs the electorate, robs citizens of their ability to live in a just, equitable society. It is a judiciary that ensures that equity, justice, and fairness prevails for every Nigerian, irrespective of creed, economic status, social status, whatever the case may be. Now, we all know that the Nigerian judiciary has not been at its very best for many, many years. And there have been a lot of talk about reforms. Even the vice president of the country presently was involved in reforming the judiciary, both when he was a Lagos State Attorney General and even since he's been the Vice President. So there have been continuous efforts to reform the judiciary. Many CJS have come in with lofty plans to improve the conditions of service for the justices and to give them better emoluments so that they are less susceptible to bribery and things like that. So judicial reform must be a continuous exercise. It never stops because you can never do well enough for them. We need to continue to look at the circumstances around the judiciary as our living conditions evolve. We need to make sure that we are evolving the judiciary. See, out of the three branches, the judiciary is the least celebrated and the least compensated. Yet, all three branches of government are equal. They are equal and balancing. But the judiciary, which is the linchpin of that whole structure, is the least recognized, the least celebrated, and the least compensated. Compare what the legislators make, the senators, the representatives, compare what the governors, the president, the vice president, the kind of fanfare and lavish life that they live, compared to the austere circumstances of the justices, which we know that justices cannot afford to be lavish, they can't be social, they can't be this, but at least they should have good emoluments, they should have good incentives to dispense justice, and that's not really happening. So it resonates with me that Chimamanda and other people yesterday spoke about the need for judicial reform, because I think to deepen our democracy, I think we've gotten over the issue of the electoral malfunctions, especially with the signing of the Electoral Act 2022 by the President earlier this year. I think the part of every 4 years, that exercise of reshuffling our representatives, those who govern us, I think we've finally gotten that right now to where rigging is to a minimum, power snatching is almost impossible, this beaver system is blocking all the loopholes. So I think that aspect, we've got it right. But the judiciary element of things need to still be improved and worked upon so that democracy can function at its optimum level.
All right, let's move away from that. Still talk about your PDP crisis, and of course, amid this worsening crisis in PDP, one of the key actors, Governor Wike of Rivers State, and some of his allies have travelled out of the country for what was described as a critical meeting on their political future. Yesterday, Vanguard led the story with PDP's crisis also, where they talked about Wike and the fact that the PDP, they are thinking of just going ahead with the campaign without Wike. What do you think about this PDP crisis that keeps getting bad every day?
The PDP doesn't need this at this time because as it is, being in the opposition, you already have a tough road to hoe going up against the incumbent in any election. And so this is the time when PDP really needs to be united, needs to marshal all of its weapons, all of its strong players, all need to coalesce into a formidable front to be able to have any hope of unseating the incumbent. So for the party to not be fractured by crisis at a time like this, it doesn't speak well, or it doesn't bode well for their chances at the polls next year. So whatever it takes to resolve the crisis, they need to try and do. We all know, we all recognize the fact that Wike is a major force in, and he's been complaining he wasn't treated well in both the presidential primary and in the selection of the vice presidential candidates. And so he's agreed. And I think it behooves the Atiku camp to find a way to placate him. That's not to say that without Wike, there is no PDP. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, without any of their members at all, without any of their strong members, PDP is weaker. And you don't need weakness at a time when you are trying to unseat an incumbent. Rather than getting weaker, what you need to do is to try and even attract more and more people. Keep all the people you have, and then try and attract more people into your fold from both the incumbent, the opposition, the splinter parties, the other contenders. What you need to do is to be strengthening yourself, not weakening yourself. So I don't know that this crisis is happening at an opportune moment. I don't think it's good for PDP, and I think they should try and find a way to resolve it very quickly. I think the last thing Wike is insisting on now is that the PDP chairman, your chair, ASUU, be removed. He says the presidential candidate and the PDP chairman cannot both come from the same zone, which is the north, and that there should be a southern. Since they've already picked the presidential candidate from the north, at least let us change the party chairman and put somebody from the south. That's his contention. And I guess Atiku is saying you can't call the shots for us. And if you don't want to sit down and cooperate and be a part of this undertaking, then we'll go ahead without you. So they are threatening to go ahead and inaugurate the presidential campaign council without Wike and without his people, which I just think will weaken their hands strongly. I don't think they need any divisiveness at this point. So there's no party without crisis, but it's a really unfortunate thing that PDP is going through this at this time, because it really weakens his hand in terms of his chances at the polls.
But of course, when you're talking about Nigeria, we can't rule out the religion. Now we have ASUU as the party's chairman. We also have Atiku as the presidential candidate. They're both from the north. Now, this is what is causing it. And let's just go back to when ASUU talked about, they said if the presidential candidate comes from the north, it's going to resign. And that's what Wike is actually putting out as his condition for peace. And this is why, it's making it look like the party is currently weak against other, presidential candidates. So what do you think about, do you think ASUU should have dropped his resignation letter?
Well, the thing about it is that this campaign is turning out to be very unconventional. We've always had, based on our country's diversity, we've always had this gentleman's agreement of rotation. We've always tried to balance tickets to be fair to all ethnicities. But if you look at it, both parties have violated those traditions. If you look at the PDP, right now we have a government that's led by a northerner. So by rights or by tradition and by convention, all parties should be presenting southern candidates right now. The PDP disabused that. They went ahead and picked a northern candidate. So with the PDP, we've already deconstructed tradition by fielding a northerner to replace a northerner. When you look at the APC has also picked a Muslim figure, which by convention and by tradition, we usually don't do. So both parties have thrown caution to the wind on the basis of they believe that at this point in time, what I want public leadership, that all of the sentiments we usually put into consideration, ethnicity, religion, gender, age, health status, whatever the case may be, that all those things no longer matter. The parties are gambling that Nigerians no longer care about those artificial labels or those artificial attributes that don't speak to your capability to govern. So IU is looking at it and is saying, well, okay, even if traditionally the presidential candidate of the party and the chairman do not come from, historically have not come from the same zone, well, this time we are fielding a candidate who's coming from the same zone as the outgoing president. So we've thrown convention out. So why should it be any different now in terms of where the party's chairman is? He is saying what should matter most is who can lead this party to victory in 2023, irrespective of where that person comes from. That he believes he is most capable of doing that, so he doesn't want to resign. So if you look at it, like I said, it's simply a season of unconvention, a season of a going back on the trends and charting a whole new course. People were saying here is a paradigm shift, whereby where you come from, the son of who you are, the language you speak, or the God you worship will no longer matter in who leads us. Let's take a ringside seat and watch. I think that may be what's unfolding.
All right, let's move on and talk about ASUU. So on the ASUU now, we on Monday next week decide on the offers by the federal government for it to end its ongoing strike. But of course, yesterday we reported that ASUU said they were going to prescribe. Federal government said they were going to prescribe ASUU if they refuse to call off the strike. So what do you think about that threat? The threat to ban ASUU if they don't call off the strike?
Well, unions, associations, groups, any kind of entity that is official exists at the largest of the government. That's just the way democracies work. So for ASUU to exist, it had to be registered by the government. And the government which registered ASUU can take away that registration if it chooses to. There's labor laws, there's trade union acts, there's all kinds of legal instruments that the government can use to put the hammer down. That's why it's very difficult to go up against government and win, because government has a lot of power. So if government is saying, look, we've been reasonable with you, we've negotiated with you, we've met you halfway, we've offered a whole lump sum of money, 100 billion here, 50 billion to polytechnics, we've said we will cover all of your outstanding emoluments, okay, even this IP system, we've said, okay, go and use your TCAS, whatever the contentions are. Government says it has met ASUU. I understand the one sticking point for now is that government is saying no work, no pay for the last 6 months that you have sat at home. And ASUU is insisting that their workers must be paid for the 6 months. And government says, you went on strike voluntarily, you've made the economy suffer, you've made our children suffer, the children have not had anything doing for the last 6 months, and you still want to collect your salary for not working. And that they will not allow that. Well, I think ASUU's hand has been weakened a bit by the withdrawal from the strike of two sister unions. I think it is NASU and another one that have pulled out of the strike. And even though by those two pulling out of the strike is not enough to get the lectures going again, but nonetheless, because of the solidarity of all the unions, it made a formidable front for the federal government to try and contend against. So ASUU's hand has been weakened by those two pulling out of the strike. ASUU's hand is further weakened by government bringing out the big hammer and saying, we will proscribe you. And the government has the power to proscribe ASUU. So I think ASUU at his meeting next morning will begin to see ASUU backtrack a little bit and try and find how to appease government and and get this thing resolved. So I think there's hope on the horizon. I think there's finally hope that this thing will be resolved very soon.
All right, still talking about school, ahead of the resumption of primary and secondary school across the nation, of course, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Rabot, he has assured that the military was committed to securing the nation's school. Now, he said that, of course, the school, we are expecting them to resume back next month from their long holidays. Now, what do you think about the statement from him? Does it mean that we are expected to see, militaries and the soldiers in front of the schools protecting the students?
To start with, we don't even have enough military personnel to put just one in every school across the country. It's not possible. It's just a logistical impossibility. So I don't think that's what he meant. I think what he meant by the fact that they will secure the schools and keep them protected is that they will use better intelligence. They will use probably electronic surveillance, advanced warning systems, and things like that, and probably deploy hardware and personnel in key areas as opposed to in every school. Also, if you look at the military efforts recently, it seems they've ramped up the onslaught against the bandits and the terrorists. In the news today, there's news about Sambisa Forest, how it was bombed yesterday or day before, and how many terrorists were eliminated there. So it seems maybe the senators' threat to impeach the president over insecurity matters, maybe that has galvanized a little bit of motivation and perhaps a stronger will to get things done, because we suddenly see the military ramping up operations lately and taking back territory. In fact, I think from what I heard the last territory in Borno under the last local government in Borno under terrorist control has finally been won back by the military. So I think Borno is now completely free of terrorist control in any particular local government. So this is good. It's going to be happening at a time when schools will be going back. Because remember, schools have been vulnerable, especially in the north, where we've had kidnappings. As we speak, there are still children from a number of schools who are kidnapped, who are still in captivity so many months later. So this, of course, is a concern to parents in terms of sending their children back to school to start the new school year come September. So it is right on point for the Chief of Defense Staff to have come to reassure parents that please do not be concerned or be worried about sending your children back to school. They will be safe, and we'll do everything in our power to prevent any untoward action or kidnapping or violence or anything in the schools. And for him to be saying that, I'm sure the military has the confidence of his ability to do that.
All right, let's end this on a lighter note with Mr. and Mrs. And speaking first, this one is Mrs. She says, it's my prayer that we are able to weather the storm in this relationship. And Mr. replied, your prayers are answered. Your husband is a man of all seasons.
Very good. Yes, indeed. Our prayers are answered. And I trust Mr. step up to the task and weather all the storm.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, for joining us this morning.
Pleasure is all mine. Have a good day.
Yes,
good morning, Nigeria.
Yes, indeed, too. And of course, he's the publisher of Ilu Page Today, Lekki Today, and Ikeja GRA Today. And he just analyzed some of the stories on the front pages with us this morning. Now, to get more of our top stories, you can follow us on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. On Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Our WhatsApp number is also displayed on your screen. Now, to get more top stories, things trending around the world and in Nigeria, you can visit our website, www.vanguardngr.com. I'm Damilola Okushakin.